Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. In order to achieve your goals, then you've got to be focused on them, right? But do you know what those goals are? Do you know what you need to say no to that's a distraction? Do all the teams and agencies that you work with march to these same exact goals? Or are they like a lot of marketers and simply overwhelmed or working on tasks that are busier than necessarily productive? Priscilla McKinney is the president and CEO of Little Bird Marketing, and she's a subject matter expert in branding and digital marketing. And on this episode, we'll discuss how to stay focused on your marketing goals and strategies, when to say no to wasted tasks, and even a little bit about harpsichords. So let's tune in to a little bird with a big shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would please tell us a little bit about yourself and your career to date.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Kenneth. This is going to be amazing. I hope that as I'm swimming, I'm being very careful. I'm treading
Yes,
treading carefully in shark's water.
you bet. You bet.
Well, a little bit about me. I manage an excellent team who drives me constantly toward fun product projects and just I don't know, innovative craziness over here. But I am the CEO of Little Bird Marketing, and we are an inbound agency. We're a digital agency. Some people call it inbound digital. Whatever it is, what we're
Sure.
trying to do is create lead generation through excellent presence online and excellent content online. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
So, when you think about campaigns for any brand or advertiser that you work with, and if
hmm
you're looking at, any, say, calendar or fiscal year ahead, there's a ton of complexity, obviously, that marketers have to take into account as we discuss. For a lot of people, they go through sort of the motions you think of with a lot of the normal tasks that they have to take on. But for a lot of people, when they're trying to pull this together and build out for that year or campaign ahead, now what are the things that people need to think about that helps them, one, come up with the goals that you help them work on, and then what also helps them keep focused on those goals for the year or campaign ahead?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, the thing is for me is there is no end of shortage of advice out there about what people should be
Really?
doing in marketing, and I find that whether it's a CMO or whether it's a CEO or whether it's a creative director or whether it's a sales manager, they're all very overwhelmed by what comes next. What should I do? And I think when you talk about focus and strategy and content planning and your goals, the thing that I think of first is learning how to say no to things because people are doing a lot of marketing activities that they should not be doing, but
Hmm.
they're looking around at other companies, they're looking around at the competitor, and they have a fear that they're going to miss the boat on something. And so they just keep haphazardly doing different marketing actions because it's either trending or because they are familiar with it. And so, in terms of what you asked me, the focus and content and planning, I say it's really about starting at the beginning and working on the word you use, which is one of my favorite ones, which is strategy, and really starting with that in mind and saying, I am not going to take on a marketing action that does not fit my strategy. And that's where the no's start. And that is very powerful in terms of focus.
So, perfect example. I just interviewed previous episode the head of global marketing for SEM Rush, and
hmm
she talks about competitive intelligence and how people don't do enough of creating their own, leveraging. They just simply go use a tool. I'm butchering how she said it, but unfortunately, a lot of people just strictly go look at what their competitors do, and then
hmm
try to replicate that alone and don't come up with
Right.
anything new. What kind of guidance do you give people so that they keep from doing that same thing over and over again? How do you start helping people create content and strategies and objectives? I mean, granted, they're going to have their own business objectives, but from say, a
Right.
creative agency guidance, what type of
hmm
things do you provide that helps keep them from doing the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that we provide is a context for it. We create a foundation. we have a proprietary system called SOAR, and you don't have to be doing our system. This is what you could take away
Hmm.
from what we understand to be foundational elements of really positive content marketing that reaches your goals. And SOAR, SOAR, stands for strategic, organized, accountable, and repeatable. And so those are four things that you could immediately take into your marketing plan and say, wait a minute, as I'm looking down the next year of planning, looking at like what my blog titles are, what my, what we should be doing. The first thing is to say, don't look at that minute detail,
Hmm.
back it up and say, what's the strategy? How can I organize this? When I'm organizing it, can I hold the actual actions that are being, organized accountable to the original strategy? And was I clear about what I'm measuring in those things so that when I do succeed, I actually could repeat it. So I think that's the first thing that we bring to the table is helping people understand that really successful marketing and really successful campaigning doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens, as I like to say, luck is an actual residue from planning.
Hmm. Well, are you running into a lot of teams that are siloing a lot of their efforts? With certain channels like email being, siloed, or digital being siloed or not working together? Or are you seeing more integration with a lot of those different channels being all pulled together to go, be
No,
more of an omni view?
you've hit the nail on the head. I see tons of siloing going on.
Yeah.
This department over here does email. This department over here, this is the social media guru. This is the person who does the SEO and works with SEMrush, and which I highly recommend.
Hmm.
All these things, they're all people that are not necessarily working together or communicating, and certainly they're not working for the same goals. And if they are working for their own particular goals, which could be, or they could just be doing their job and not planning at all. If they are working for goals, they're working for goals that somehow have gotten, just ripped apart from the actual overall company's goals. And so there's not this sense of an overall goal and there's not a flow of those different channels. The other thing I would say, siloing is a big problem. The other thing I would say is that also I'm seeing in teams and in companies that people are championing their pet projects. Like, oh, I really love
Oh yeah.
Facebook Live, or I really love this. It's like, I don't care if you love it. And I break it down this way when I'm speaking. One of the things I love to do is to poll the audience and ask them, who is a big fan of Uber? And people raise their hand. Who is a fan of Lyft? And people raise their hand. And then I'll say, okay, great. Now we know how we divide. But now please raise your hand if the last time you got in the Uber or the Lyft, you told the driver, hey, just take me anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
And they all laugh, but the reality is that is what they are doing with their marketing. They should have like a place that they're going, but instead they're so fixated on, but I gotta take Uber, I gotta take Lyft, I gotta take Facebook, I gotta take Twitter, we gotta be on LinkedIn, we gotta, whatever it is, and they are choosing the channel over their strategy.
I couldn't agree more. And same thing applies to tech. So many people get, locked in with the MarTech that they're used to or that they love that helps them achieve
Mhm.
their goal only. And that could be a totally, not totally different goal, but it could take them in a completely different direction than
Right.
Johnny or Susie who sits next to them, but they're not working on the same efforts. And it's crazy how they get marched off into the wrong path. So,
Oh, that's so totally true. The other thing that we help people do is understand really where they are right now.
right.
Because before you can take marketing efforts to the next level, we need to define the what level we're sitting on right
Hmm.
now. And I think that a lot of people skip that assessment place, and that's where they get completely mired down in all the opinion about what you could be doing in marketing. But great marketing requires knowing that there are certain actions that are appropriate for a particular stage that you're in business. And one specific marketing action that could be just absolutely, knocking it out of the park at one time in your career, or at one time in your campaign, maybe that same action would do absolutely nothing if it's done at the wrong time. So those are kind of the ways that I think about what you talked about, focus and what's happening when people are really not, giving a really bringing clarity to the campaign or clarity to marketing actions.
So, and I think you've probably seen this as well, but I've been on the agency side, I've been on the advertiser side, I've been on the consultant side, I've been on the publisher side. Um, uh, and
I
with
won't
all
tell
of them,
everybody you've been around,
yeah,
okay?
I've been around. So, but what I've seen, and I think, and this is throughout my career, is most of the decent sized companies have a chief marketing officer or somebody at a high enough level who should be providing that strategy, at least that comes down from the board of directors, the CEO, or whoever. Why do you think that strategy that they've come up with isn't being listened to enough to help Johnny and Susie stay focused on the same goal? Because what you said earlier, and again, they're all working in different directions. It's you also see that they may be working with different agencies, and all those agencies are trying to compete, for their space, if you will, because every agency, we both belong to them. Every agency can fix every problem that they want, that you can come up with, but
Right,
it may not march towards a company's goals. And so a lot of that strategy has to be given from, senior leadership. And
right.
I don't, to this day, I don't know that they'll ever figure out why they aren't marching towards that strategy, but they're marching
Mhm.
either to their own or the ones that they've been given by a lot of different agencies.
Right, right. Well, I think
How's that
where
for a question in a nutshell?
yeah, I think I get you. I get you. I think the reason why people aren't following the strategy that someone is, telling them to execute is, there it obviously signals a lack of buy-in. So there's a lot of people involved, but everybody is not bought into what really needs to be done. And that's because people are sometimes throwing, hey, this action needs to be done, as opposed to talking about the strategy that needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that we talked about that a little bit, but let me back up a little bit further. I think the reason is because, they told us always in school, show your work. It's not good enough just to get there. And, what good is it getting to the end of success and being like, well, that was great. I don't know how we did it and I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it again. But, we need to show our work. And actually, what's interesting about being patient and showing our work in terms of how we come up with the strategy, that's there's a byproduct to that, and that is called buy-in. And so, we do and what we specialize in is backing everybody up before strategy, before goals, and saying, but who is your audience? Who is your ideal, client? Who is your ideal buyer? And let's start with who we're actually trying to reach, because if you don't know your audience, you don't know what to say next.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, then you're just talking and talking and talking. And so if people don't back up first and address the real need to understand your buyer personas, then I think that's the very root of why there's no buy-in, there's no good conversation, you can't like even argue effectively in
Sure.
a marketing department when you don't have that original basis. And so we really specialize in helping people understand their ideal client. I don't care what you call it, a buyer persona, buyer avatar, but call it whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
but you need one. And it's about really crafting that perfect persona, I would say in quotes. I'm doing my little air quotes here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that you can see the difference between a company that comes out ahead and one that, fails based on the quality of their persona work, but also the company who gets there with the most fun and with the most sense of purpose is also one who did prior persona work.
So, how many personas then, based on that, do you think is generally either too many or too few personas for a brand to have?
Oh, that's a really great question because it really is different. You can really have as many as you want, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't necessarily focus on all of them at any given time. So you could sell the 10 different, very unique buyers, but do you have enough money and scale
Mm-hmm.
to actually mount very significant campaigns that are
Exactly.
completely in tuned with all 10 of those buyers? And the answer for most people's budget is no. We really can bring, especially we specialize and work a lot in B2B. And so we find that there's typically two, maybe up to four different personas. But in the first year of working with someone, we really encourage them to stick to the two main ones that are either either most profitable or the people who let them do the best work for, a ratio of profit. So it's not always the absolute most profitable person because maybe they're looking to really understand that more aligned buyer persona and they want to do it better. So we talk a lot about how do we go about picking them, but it's really about moving beyond, just simple demographic information, but really getting a deeper look at them. And if we can understand them, then we can start tailoring actual campaigns that will resonate with them and will build rapport with them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think what a lot of companies, unfortunately, are starting to do, especially in the B2C world, is they're generally looking at old people, millennials, or single moms. And then you see a lot of people just sort of, or maybe not necessarily single moms, but more the mother purchaser.
Mhm.
And, they kind of get locked in with that. And then it just becomes generic marketing to those three different age and
Ab
gender groups. And that's, I think, unfortunately, because we can do so much more from a dynamic perspective that people can make affordable, especially if they can't afford to do it the wrong way. That's what they should,
Right.
where they
Right.
should look at it. But what's your advice on how you start building out, you know, a content and a content calendar, and how you
Mhm.
start planning for the year ahead once you've got those personas, and then
Mhm.
how do you keep, you know, your teams,
Mhm.
accountable to the organization for that strategy as well.
Yeah, we here at Little Bird Marketing, we don't write someone's social media post or write a blog or write an email without having the actual persona in front of us.
Hmm.
So that's one way we keep ourselves accountable because a lot of times people will do that work or they'll come to us and say, "Oh yeah, we did that work in an offsite retreat we had in Scottsdale." I'm like, "Yeah,
Right,
but
right.
did you ever bring it back to the office and have you ever talked about it since then?" So yeah, keeping the personas front and center is important. And then keeping, everything kind of organized in one place. Like we use personas and then we have our hat, what we've decided is the hashtag strategy. And then we'll have our SMART goals. And these are all things that you could Google on, on the internet and find some really good, ways to get at them and great tools and even a lot of free tools and including at Little Bird Marketing our most used free tool is our persona guide, and it's just a learn and fill yourself, try it out, and so you can get those things done. But my way that we actually make that accountable and we make sure that we're uh, putting the actual marketing efforts or marketing actions and micro actions in alignment with that is we keep it all on one project management board. We happen to use Trello. Again, that's a free service, Trello. And so you're getting a lot of like free pieces of advice here, but that's to me what it's about, keeping it all in one place where an entire group can see the overall strategy not being broken apart and torn apart from the actual actions. So I don't care what kind of a calendar people put on or use Asana or use, Slack to talk or whatever, but for me a Trello board is how we build it out because you very quickly can visually see your whole year. We do the four what we would call the pillars of content or digital marketing. One is social media, the other one's blogs, the other one's lead magnets, and the last one is emails. And those so that applies to almost everybody in business. You have those four main pillars that you need in order to establish and maintain an online presence and nurture your most ideal clients. So that doesn't differ for anybody. But if you have those running in completely different systems, and I've got to go into MailChimp or I got to go into HubSpot, I got to go into these other places in order to see the copy and to see what's going on, you're asking too much of people.
Oh,
They need to be
agreed.
able to see it, in one place and see it really come to life. And it starts playing off each other. And that's how we keep people from moving into those type of siloed situations.
Yeah, or the worst is when they've got, Google Docs, because then everybody's got a Google Doc, and get them to
Yeah.
talk to each other. But to your point, spot on with where they become diverse, and it's another point of where people stop focusing on bringing in sales, and
Hmm.
people. Not that every piece of marketing by any stretch has to be written, for a lead or a sales only. There are times when it's
Right.
brand awareness or whatever, but eventually, it's very easy when you're going off in different paths, for your example of social blogs, lead magnets, and email. It's very easy that they go off into totally different directions and don't
Mhm.
push that customer, or I say push the customer, lead the customer down the right
Right.
journey and answer a question
Mhm.
to help fix a problem. And if anything, not just for a sale, it prevents people from keeping a focus on the customer.
Well, and I totally agree. I totally agree. And here's my tool that I created to help myself and remember. I totally agree with you that not everything is pushing toward a sale. Now, it's all a part of a strategy for a sale.
Right.
And what I say in anything in order to create the right balance, and social is the most easily understood way of understanding the rule of 15. And what I mean by that is that for every 15 social media posts, you can imagine that visually in your mind, you have 15 social media posts out there, 10 of them have to be interesting. They have to be somehow, resonating with your audience and have them go, oh, that's interesting. The next four need to be helpful, a tool, a trick, a perspective, something that helps them go, wow, okay, I could use that. And for those 14, every time you have a good solid mix of those 14, you earn the right for one post that is going for the sale. And that really keeps people in alignment with understanding the respect that they need to give to their buyer. And like you said, helping them move down the buyer's journey instead of pushing them, just really, helping to facilitate their journey.
Do you run into a lot of pushback then? And the 15 is a fair number, but for a lot
Hmm.
of people, freak out when they hear one out of 15, and
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
think of social as no sales allowed. But are you running
Well,
into that a lot with clients, or other agencies that you might interact with those same
you
clients?
know, I usually when I say that from a stage, everybody goes, "Oh, like, thank you.
Yeah.
Finally, now I get it." So, I don't think I get pushback at all. I think people, a lot of times act differently as a person. Like, they leave work and
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh, I'll listen to this or I'll do this," or, "Man, I'm not gonna give time to this." And we all have our preferences and we work a certain
Hmm.
way and we don't respect someone who goes for the jugular. Like I use the analogy a lot of times about someone who walks into, a cocktail party and goes, "Hey, everybody, look at me. I'm amazing." And
Yeah.
then tells me
Yeah.
five ways that they're amazing. Nobody puts up with that in social context, but yet sometimes what's coming down from the, CMO or the strategist is like, you got to do that. You got to tell them what we are and tell them what we are and tell them what we are. And it's like, "Oh my gosh, nobody wants to be treated like that."
Hmm.
So when we like break ourselves apart from how we truly are as humans and then come in as marketers and do something different, it makes no sense. But I say that also, to take it even a step further with sales or call to actions for buy from me. Can you imagine if someone walked into that same cocktail party and said, "Hey, my name's Priscilla. Want to get married?"
Yeah.
And people are like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, that's too much." I don't even know if I want to drink with you.
Well,
And so that's what we're doing, and when we're not, when we're not doing the nice things that I can let me make some small talk with you first at a cocktail party before we ever let me tell you some things that are interesting. Let me tell you some things that are helpful. And then maybe you'll look to me when you actually want
for
something.
sure. So, but a lot of teams, if they had heard you say one out of 15, what they would end up repeating is, oh, can you believe it? Priscilla told us to go post 15 times sales stuff on social because, they don't they don't listen to that, and they don't
Right.
recognize that it's part of a bigger strategy.
Right.
It's not a hard sell. I mean,
You know?
people aren't saying bye 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 on a social post, so it freaks
No,
them
and
out.
here's the beauty for our clients. We're not asking them to go post anything on social because
Exactly.
we're a done for you service.
Yeah, exactly. So
So,
when you think about each of those four different pieces, then, I mean, obviously we spend a lot of time gearing ourselves up in the planning, but
mm,
kind of elaborate, if you will, on what goes into the after with a blog or a social piece or or an email post or whatever.
mhm,
But how do you sort of look at the after part of the different types of posts and content that you produce?
okay. That's a great question. First of all, we have micro actions, but I'm going to answer that question in a much bigger way. I like to think about content and about content strategy like a Thanksgiving turkey. And so bear with me on this. I know that might sound funny, but we work ourselves up to this big day in Thanksgiving and we make this huge turkey, and we've got only 4 people in our family, but yet we have a 30-pound bird. What are we doing? We're American, that's why. So I like to think about it like, okay, there's this big turkey and it's amazing, it's delicious, it takes us a long time to prepare. We've been looking forward to it and here it is. We carve it out, but there's so much left over. And who actually takes the rest of the turkey and just throws it into the trash? We don't. We make turkey a la king. You got turkey sandwiches tomorrow. You've got turkey stew. I mean, you get to the point, that, 6 days later, you're like opening up your Tupperware at work going, oh my God, if there's turkey in here, I'm going to kill someone. But I like to think of content that way in some ways to tell people this. You don't have to make a turkey dinner every time you create a piece of content. If you would once a year create an amazing, meal, then we would have a lot to snack on for the rest of the year. Now, I would rather freeze it and have some a month from now because I don't want to have it 5 days in a row after, after we had the turkey. So you can see where I'm going with this, why this analogy I think happens to be very helpful. I think the reason why people don't stick on to, the planning that they do is I think they get bogged down in like, I've got to write the manifesto for this or
Hmm.
the ultimate guide for that. No, you don't. You have to write a 350, word blog. It just doesn't have to be that complicated.
Hmm.
So, what needs to happen, however, what people fail to do is they put too much importance on the actual big, content piece and they don't put enough importance on all of the follow through. So, for example, when the vernacular here, when we say, hey, let's write a blog, we don't mean one line item, write a blog. We mean let's write or source the blog content based on some targeted keywords that are circled around our topic clusters because that's good for search engine optimization. Let's create the content based on one particular persona. Let's go look at what actual topics are trending and what questions that persona was asking, and let's actually answer one of those, if not two of those. Let's create a great featured image. Let's make sure we watermark that image. Let's make sure we put it on Instagram for, in a different, size for Instagram. Let's post that blog to HubSpot or your website or wherever it is let's link like several different sentences in there to other blogs that we've already written, and then after we publish it, let's maybe push it out over into one of our emails with a blog recap. Let's actually post it 4 more times this year on LinkedIn. Now, think about that. Just that one thing I said to say, take one massive piece of blog content you wrote and put it on LinkedIn 4 times this year. And people are like, oh, well, we can't reuse stuff out there. Yes, you can.
Hmm.
Not only can you, but you should. In fact, you should probably tweet it once a month. You should probably put it on, Facebook, whatever channel you're on. Again, Uber or Lyft. I don't care where you're on. Don't go based on the cab driver. Go based on your destination. Like, what am you trying to do? You're trying to get that content out. And so I know this is kind of going long, but I hope it's really important. It's really important for people to understand that there's a whole list of many, many, many micro actions that should be done every time we say a simple thing that is write a blog.
Yes,
And we shouldn't miss one of those.
agreed. I will admit, though, you did go long, but I was thinking of pumpkin pie most of the time when you brought up turkey, so I was good. A little
Fair
pecan
enough.
pie
Fair enough.
too, but yeah.
Maybe I'll refine my
No,
analogy.
that's good. So,
Uh,
odd question: why do you highly recommend auto harps?
oh, wow.
I
Okay.
read in your bio, and then I brought up
Mhm.
some imagery on the Google machine of Dolly Parton
Oh,
holding an auto harp.
well, I will send you a picture as my favorite picture of me with Leighton, my producer here, who's also incredibly musically talented. He wrote our theme song for our podcast, and he writes so much stuff for our clients. But he and I did a mock record cover of him with his ukulele and me with my auto harp, and it is the most hilarious picture. It'll really make your day. But why I recommend auto harps really comes from an experience I had of starting my blog. I'm sorry, not my blog, my podcast. And my podcast is just one of those things I love to do. So this backstory is that I love the auto harp. I had a teacher in elementary school who, on some music days, we could come in and he's like, "It's auto harp day," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I love it!" And there was a wall, a whole wall with racks with auto harps. I mean, do you remember when our school system actually had music and had money? So it was back then. Some kids might not know this, but and we would walk up and you would take an auto harp out, and every once in a while run into someone who's like, "What is an auto harp?"
Yeah.
So it's like a sits on the desk, and you press one button that says like A, and you strum it and it goes bring
Hmm.
right up and it's an A. So just like how people would play guitar, you have to learn all the fingering and figure it all out. But with an auto harp, if it says in the music play an A, you press the A button and you strum it. So it's anybody can play it. It's like it's brings music to the masses. So my point in a very crazy and long story is that I loved those days. But let me tell you that auto harps are not cool and they are never coming back. But I am holding on because I am a complete lover. They make me totally happy. They're so fun with people. It immediately makes people laugh and sing crazy songs. We sing, Freddie Mercury's yeah, We Are the Champions.
Wow.
We sing, um what's the Rainbow Connection song. We sing all kinds of songs
It's
that just
funny.
make people happy and let's go fly a kite. But my point is that I love it and it's not going to be cool anytime soon, but I don't need to be cool. I
Yeah.
need to do things that really enliven me. And my podcast was one of those things that it doesn't, I started, we're past 100 episodes now, but you can resonate with this,
Yeah.
Shark, I'm sure, is that it doesn't make you money and for the longest time. And I never even started it with the idea of it ever making money. It
For
was just
sure.
something I wanted to do. I wanted to pull that podcast down off the shelf and just play it. And so I highly recommend doing those things. It really has, over the years now, come back to provide not only financially for me, but also provide amazing contacts, amazing interviews with amazing people, and just it has given so much more joy back to me than I ever thought possible. But I highly recommend auto harps because you should do the thing that you think is either not profitable or not cool or not trending, simply if it brings you total joy. And that's what my podcast is to me.
Yeah. And if you can, if you can build your career off a musical instrument that's basically the love child of a piano and a guitar,
Right, right.
then you've done something. So, Priscilla, it is that special time in the show known worldwide. Are you ready for the 5 most important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Okay, you warned me, but I'm not ready, but we're going to do it.
All
We're going to
right.
do
Well, it
it
has
anyway.
nothing to do with an auto harp today, so
Okay,
you're in the
okay.
clear
I'll
there.
try.
Number 1, blogging or podcasting.
Oh, that's a killer.
Sophie's choice. You got to pick it.
I'd say blogging because it's more accessible to more people, but as you can tell by my voice,
Yeah,
casting brings me all the joy.
I agree. So, you're now in Missouri, or
Yes.
Kansas. Your hometown, or I say your current hometown of Joplin, Missouri, or legendary singer Janis Joplin?
Well, I've got to pick one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, Janis Joplin.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry,
It's
that
a,
was no contest.
well, yeah. I don't know any big singers from Joplin, Missouri. I'm sure there are plenty, but
Mhm.
for-profit clients or nonprofit clients, looking at your resume.
Oh, we work for so many nonprofits.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'd have to say for profit just because it's much easier to have the for profit conversation. But I do very quickly, and I do attract the kind of nonprofits who understand that we're not nonprofit, we're not for profit, but
Yeah.
that they have to have profit. And if they can get into that profit conversation in an incredibly healthy way, I'm down with it. But I got
Exactly.
to say, maybe for ease, maybe for profit.
Number 4, beloved Sesame Street children's character, known worldwide, Big Bird or Little Bird marketing.
definitely Little Bird Marketing, but I remember a client who was vetting us. He was a potential client at the time, became a client, but he was from Dubai. And finally, at the end of the meeting, in a pretty thick accent, he's like, Priscilla, I must ask you, why not the big bird? Why a little bird? And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so funny that, this is just a cultural misunderstanding. But I was like, so every once in a while through the years, I have received little gifts that are big bird. When we've done something really great, people are like, well, we thought it deserved a big bird.
That's
So,
funny. Well,
yeah.
that's an amazing accent that you do for people of
Oh,
Dubai and the
uh-oh.
UAE. So,
It's pretty true to him, I have
yeah.
to say.
Well, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, biscuits for sure. I
Uh,
hate
hey,
cornbread.
it goes with Thanksgiving, though. So, and your
Not at
turkey
my house.
analogy. So, Priscilla, where can people search and find out more about you, follow your thought, leadership, and marketing advice?
Well, I do tweet quite a bit, and it's Little Bird MKTG. But I am on LinkedIn all the time. That you can get me directly there. But if you want some great free resources and to read our blog, which seriously would it's an education in itself. We work so hard on giving you good info. Check it out at Little Bird Marketing. There's all kinds of freebies to download, and if there's anything that we can do to help you along the way, you'll probably find it on our website.
All right. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Oh, thanks so much, Kenneth. I had a great time.
So there was my conversation with Priscilla McKinney, the president and CEO of Little Bird Marketing, and she's a subject matter expert in branding and digital marketing. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, for most marketers and teams, they are simply overwhelmed. As Priscilla said, people are doing a lot of marketing activities that they should not be doing, but they're looking around at other companies, looking around at the competitors, and they have a fear that they're going to miss the boat on something, so they just keep haphazardly doing different marketing actions because it's either trending or because they're familiar with it. So here's some advice. Start at the beginning and focus your efforts on what fits into your strategy and say no to what diverts you from that. And as a simple reminder, whatever the task, keep your focus on the customer first. Second, are you marching to a common goal? If you aren't focused with a goal as an internal team, then why would you think that the person next to you would be, or another agency, or the multiple agencies you work with, on what should be fairly singular efforts? So often I've seen, and even more often now I hear, how much more of a problem it is with siloing within departments and or other agencies. Then you've got individuals championing their own pet projects. You've got teams or agencies working on their different projects and hoping that all of that converges together. So, for you, stay focused on your customer first when executing your strategy. Don't waste your time on marketing tasks that aren't focused on your goals. And then over communicate every chance you can where you are in executing that strategy. Third, as Priscilla said, and quite simply, don't choose the channel over a strategy. I couldn't agree more. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my honor to spend this time with you in order to discuss another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. So just as Mr. Miyagi told Daniel's son and the Karate Kid, focus. I mean, he also said sand the floor and paint the fence, but let's just go with focus. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.